Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, the UFC has a new TV streaming home, and it's Paramount that we talk about it. UFC middleweight Anthony Hernandez is not playing around. Holy cow, Fluffy. And speaking of UFC middleweights, the top two in the world will tango in Chicago this Saturday at UFC 319. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con, and look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. Dan Tom, he's our fight analyst. He's in Las Vegas, raring to go. Danny Segura, down in the 305, one of our top reporters. That's Miami, folks, the 305. And Farah Hanoun checks in from Morocco, also one of the top reporters in the game. Goes is going to be on the ones and twos today, but before we get started, please hit the like button, trigger the algorithm. Let's get this thing blowing up. All right, folks, we had a whole show planned out for you as of yesterday, but this morning there's huge news that we got to cover. We're going to start with it. So in 2026, the UFC is headed to CBS Paramount. 7 years, $7.7 billion deal for all UFC events. Pay-per-views, no mas. ESPN, no mas. Let's go over some of these details. The deal, according to a news release from the UFC and Skydance Corporation, which owns Paramount, is for $7.7 billion over 7 years. The UFC's annual 13 pay-per-view events, plus an additional fight night, 30 of those, will stream on Paramount Plus, its streaming platform. Additional events will be broadcast live on CBS as well as, on CBS, which is Paramount's flagship network. The days of the UFC United States-based consumers purchasing pay-per-view events at $80 a pop is over. So a lot of people in the United States are pretty happy about that. Paramount Plus subscriptions, by the way, they average about $99 a month to $12.99 a month, depends on ads, but that'll be it, folks. This is pretty huge. Here's a quote from Paramount press release. This shift in distribution strategy will unlock greater accessibility and discoverability for sports fans and provide an important catalyst for driving engagement and further subscriber growth for Paramount Plus. Basically, more eyeballs, more fans, and it'll allow them to grow. So that's big. The UFC's broadcast rights deal with ESPN ends at the end of this year. ESPN had paid an average of $500 million annually for 5 years. I got more stuff to read here, but let's get some initial reaction from the stars of the show, the panel. Danny Segura, man, talk to me about this. 7 years, $7.7 billion. That's a lot of cheddar.
Yeah, a lot. Compared to the last deal, I mean, it's grown a ton. And yeah, it's a big surprise for me because I thought this deal would end up being multiple deals. I thought the UFC product would end up being spread around, the same thing we see with football and the NBA. And Dana White had kind of hinted that, talk about Netflix and all these other things in the lead up to this new deal. But here we go. Your UFC is staying pretty much almost exclusively with Paramount, at least in the US. And that was a bit surprising. But overall, I think this is a good thing. This is more money. This kind of speaks on the growth of the UFC, which is in correlation with the growth of the sport. And I love hearing you say, Gigi, the end of pay-per-views. This is pretty sweet, huh?
Yes. US-based, I can't emphasize that enough. Apparently, each country, territories around the world kind of have their own deals. Like right now, I'm currently in Peru. They're on Disney Plus, but looks like Paramount will have like a 30-day window where they can exclusively negotiate and figure that out. So many other countries, you'll have to see what your new plan will be. But for the US-based audience, this is very big, because we pay monthly for ESPN Plus, and then we still got to pay another $80 for the pay-per-view. I mean, it's a lot. And granted, ESPN is the sports leader, but a lot of people were not too pleased with that. Dan, you're based in the U.S. What are your thoughts? Think of it as talk to me as a fan, obviously, first. We have different ways of, the way we cover the events because we're media. But most fans have to pay out the ass, man, for a lot of the UFC product.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. As a fan, I'm curious because I'm one of those people who finally cut cable and like cut every like thing possible outside of like apps I need for work, basically. And times are tight for myself and many out there in this country. So I'm curious, as far as like, yeah, is it like, do you have to get another cable deal, or can you get access to all the CBS network shows? Which again, they didn't mention Contender Series or Tough, but as far as the what is it, the 40, the however many 43 event schedule, including, pay-per-views, which are now PLE, about 13 of those premium live events. Do we get all those via an app, or do we have to, get suckered back into our evil cable network promoters? How are they going to be able to solve this? I imagine the app will be able to solve it. And I would hope the app would be something, able to do for other markets, though. I've been told, like, markets like Mexico and whatnot, like Paramount doesn't really do business there. So how is that going to go? Canada, it's still the same for them. But yeah, as far as the fan perspective in the US goes, it mainly comes down to dollars and cents. And that's what we care about. Unfortunately, not enough people care about the dollars and cents in the fighter's pocket, which is the big question. You hear politicians on both sides of the aisle talk about this thing, folks, called the trickle-down effect. What does the trickle down to 7.7 billion do for the fighters in general, especially the ones losing their pay-per-view points? That to me is more the biggest thing, but I also understand that you're asking me from a fan perspective. And sadly, George, the fans don't really care too much about the fighters, even though they'll crucify us media members for even criticizing the.
All right.
But anyways, that's
I get you, man. Listen, the money, we were talking about that pre-show. Pay-per-view points, what's going to happen there? I'm sure, well, I shouldn't say that because I thought for sure we'd hear more about post-USADA, and we still haven't heard about that. But hopefully the UFC does inform us of that. I know the world champions are wondering what's up with that. Father Hanoun, how about you? You're out of the country. I'm not sure how you consume the UFC product. Is it just basically monthly, you get it all, or do you have to go dipping around to different spots?
No, it's monthly. I get it all. Subscription per month. It's pretty cheap, so no problems on my end. Doesn't affect anything for me, and I don't think anything changes for me. In the Middle East, it airs on Stars Play, so I think business as usual for me. But in terms of, I think the interesting point right here is in terms of the fighters, because a lot of people were complaining about the quality of the pay-per-views, and I think now that you're not paying for the numbered events, it's like, what is the UFC's incentive to make those events better? There isn't, right? Because you're not paying for them, you're getting them anyway. 30 numbered events throughout the year. 13, excuse me, numbered. I don't know, what were we going to call them from now on? Not pay-per-views. I think it's going to stick a bit of a habit. Numbered events. But yeah, like 13 in the year. Now there isn't really that incentive to improve, I guess, the quality of the cards. And it doesn't seem like we're getting less events throughout the year with the number of fight nights as well. So I think in that regard, what people were complaining about in terms of the quality of some of these cards, in terms of the UFC, the incentive to make them better, well, people aren't necessarily having to pay for these numbered events, right? So I think in that regard, nothing really changes. The big question is here in terms of the fighters, like how do they benefit? Are we talking ad revenue? Like what happens with them? Because it seems like, I mean, we haven't really gotten numbers as of late, but it seems like the pay-per-view numbers have dipped this past year or so, which could play a big part into why the UFC have decided to go this direction. So yeah, in terms of the champions, the superstars of the promotion, how do they benefit? I think that's the biggest question. But in terms of the fans, great, obviously, because what is it, $85 that you have to pay sometimes twice a month, like in October. That's a lot, especially when some people aren't too happy with specific cards. So obviously great news for the fans in that regard. It's all about the fighters and what's going to happen with them.
Great job, guys. That is an interesting point. Now, how are they going to spill the talent? Because they used to obviously try and fatten up the numbered pay-per-view events. How will that be? And then, of course, pay-per-view points. I know the fighters are all over this, wondering how will this affect us? All right, so the UFC now leaves ESPN. They're with Paramount. Were you surprised, Fada, at this? Like Danny said, we thought maybe Netflix. We thought maybe multiple spots. Dana White said it himself. Now it's just one spot. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it wasn't on my radar at all, to be honest. I think Netflix was something a lot of people were talking about. We saw WWE go to ESPN, so I assumed that it would be Netflix, a bit of a maybe a switcheroo or whatnot. But didn't expect it. Wasn't really on my radar, but here we are.
For sure. Do you like the move, Dan? Were you surprised when you heard Paramount? I mean, it kind of caught me off guard. How about you? Your mic's muted.
It made me want to retweet that epic Jason Mayhem Miller post-fight interview crashing from back in the day when CBS was on MMA back in, what was it, 2009, 2010, UFC Strikeforce Nashville. No, I kind of kept an open mind to it. I was hoping selfishly for Netflix because, again, like I said, I killed all my apps, which means Netflix. And I'm like, oh, sweet, I can get Netflix again under the guise of work. Let's do it. But when you thought about it, it was like what Netflix want compared to what the UFC was offering. That really didn't match up. So I kind of left the doors open. I didn't have any strong speculation. So in that sense, I'm maybe not as surprised as others, but did I call CBS? No way. I didn't have this one in my cards, but apparently they're throwing around a lot of money and they have more of a platform that maybe fits what the UFC wants to put out. So it doesn't seem that crazy in hindsight, maybe.
There wasn't a lot of sports franchises or sports available till like 2028. And I guess this was another reason they wanted to jump on it. But I'm going to compare it here to some of the other deals just to give a little bit more context. Let's see here. The NFL's current media rights deal is around $10 billion a year spread out over several companies. The UFC's is $1.1 billion per year. But now obviously the NFL's a juggernaut. However, check out a couple of the other sports. NBA currently has a deal that's $2.5 billion a year, so a little bit more than twice as much. Major League Baseball, all right, a national pastime in the United States, they're around $1.5 billion annually for broadcast rights, so they're not too far ahead of the UFC. A testament to the UFC, what they were able to negotiate, their growth, and I believe baseball was going to be the first sport available, and maybe that's why Paramount just figured, hey, we got to make a move here, and they grabbed it all. This broke this morning, folks, and maybe the panel can correct me, but it looked like in the last 48 hours they were able to, ramp up these negotiations and make sure they did get all of these events, not just the fight nights, but the pay-per-views. But Dan Tom brought up a good point. What about Dana White Contender Series? What about Tough? What about everything else? We don't know. As the details trickle in, obviously, we'll keep updating our story on MMA Junkie, but this is a monster move. How much will the fighters see, Danny? Will this wake them up on the profitability of the product?
So just real quick before answering that, I can totally see something like Tough, which is season-based and there's episodes dropped every week. I can totally see that ending up on Netflix. That's something Netflix would very much like to add to the sports library. But anyways, I mean, honestly, I'm kind of tired of talking about this just because like it's a conversation that keeps going nowhere, and it seems really the only people that care about it is us, the media, and to a certain extent, part of my initial reaction, I know Farah and Dan were talking about immediately how this could affect the fighters. Mine wasn't, but I think I'm probably starting to not care as much as well. But the truth is that, I mean, we sound like a broken record. But yeah, of course, the fighters are getting screwed here. We see that in other TV deals in terms of like sports. The athletes get a portion of it. And in this case,
sometimes 50-50.
Yeah. And in this case, again, they're getting nothing. And again, are we going to hear something from the fighters? I bet you there's not going to be a single tweet about this. I mean, the only people talking about it is us. So look, if the fans don't care, if the fighters don't care, then what are you gonna do about it? But yes, should they see some of this money? Yes. And in terms of like how much the fighters getting these days and bonuses, I think they should look at that deal and be like, wait, is my pay? Am I getting the appropriate races according to how much more expensive or how much more value now the sport is? And the value is brought by what? The fighters and the fights. So obviously the UFC has a hand in that in terms of logistics and all that. But yeah, they should. If I'm a fighter and I see that deal, I'm thinking everyone should be up for a new contract.
what I heard is that Renato Moicano doesn't want to raise anyway, so he's not too concerned. But as far as the other 599 athletes, we've been saying this for years. Collectively, as a group, you have power. Individually, probably not. But I think it's going to be interesting to see whose management team, the ones that have agents, who are the ones that are going to be able to sift through the numbers and try and correlate what they used to get paid, and then according to the new contract, what they can get paid. But again, individually, it's like walking the plank. It's very, very difficult to negotiate against the UFC. The reason these other sports have been so successful to get to where they're at. Have you guys seen what NBA and Major League Baseball players make? It's ridiculous. But if you get injured, you are covered. All right. It's all guaranteed. In the NFL, it's not all guaranteed. You can get some guaranteed money, but that's negotiated at the front in a signing bonus. So even them, I know they wish they had the contracts and the protection that NBA and MLB players get, but they did that collectively. They had to strike, they had to make sacrifices. In our sport, too much selfishness. I don't know if we'll get there. I hope they do, because they deserve some of this pie, guys. You know what I'm saying? Oh man, I'm really happy for the numbers. I'm happy for the growth of the sport. I'm happy that I don't have to jump around and pay a bunch of different places. I already got Paramount Plus. Have you seen Lioness or Landman? I mean, they got some great shows. Stoked about it, but yes, the fighters are the product. Go ahead, Danny.
The deal with ESPN 5 years ago, it was
500 million for 5 years.
How much?
500 million for 5 years, and I think initially
500 million a year.
So much they upped it. Yeah, they did a quick renegotiation because ESPN saw value. This is more than double.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to get at. So it's about a little bit more than double. So what is the UFC selling here to Paramount? What did Paramount just buy? The product itself, right? And sure, the UFC puts on a stage, a broadcasting team, and they have expenses, but the core of the product is the fights, right? The fighters themselves. So obviously it doesn't correlate 100%, but I think more or less there's an accurate translation that the labor that the fighters are putting on that octagon is more or less worth double now, right? So like you should be getting paid twice as much. Obviously,
I'd start with that, because remember, I think it used to be like 18 to 20% of
right. But I'm just saying, whatever they were getting paid now,
fighters, and the ESPN deal was so big, and the fighters didn't move up and negotiate their own deals, that it went down, I heard, to like 13%. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, this hopefully a lot of the fighters, especially the ones that make a lot of money, lead the way and get some smart people to figure out exactly what is the value of each person, and then it'll trickle down. You know,
there's no way that's gonna happen. We we all it's not gonna happen. But like, yeah, if you just look at it like, it's literally the same amount of fights, the same fights, and now they're worth more than double. So yeah, I mean, theoretically, like, they should get paid more, but I have no hope whatsoever that something is going to change here, to be honest, in terms of their pay.
All right, we'll move on to UFC Vegas 109, but I want to give the panel one last chance. Anything else you want to say on the deal, Dan, before we move on?
I'll just quote a scene from The Wire. It just reminds me of a scene from the great show The Wire, where one of the characters, a politician, is coming under fire for money he takes, and he's just like, I'll take any MF's money if he's giving it away. Shit. That's what I picture Dana White right now. Sorry.
All right. Fada, any thoughts here before we move on?
No, I think we've covered it pretty much. I think, not to keep it all negative, it seems like, judging by some of the comments here, people are happy to obviously not have to pay $85. So yeah, let's focus on that positive, and I guess they'll figure it out over time in terms of what it means for the fighters. I think there's more is going to come out throughout this week, and I'm sure they're going to be asked about it. Let's see if people can ask Dana White at these press conferences or whatnot. The media, at least. The media and Jake Paul are trying.
A lot of this will fall on the fighters to push their camps to learn more. Hopefully someone like Ilia Topuria, man, that guy strikes me as pretty sharp all around in his product, not just him as a fighter, but his brand. Hopefully, someone like him, and some of the other stars, the champions mostly, can, figure out, put a number on this, because hopefully we do see salaries go up or payouts go out. They're the ones why we tune in. It's 3 letters, obviously, that bring us there every Saturday, but they perform, and that's why we keep coming back. As we know more, we'll update the website, and I'm sure there'll be subsequent segments here on Spinning Back Clique. So let's move on to, how about Fluffy Hernandez, guys? What a finish. What a fighter this guy is. What a statement win for him. Fada, back to you. Put it into words, especially that 3rd round. Well, let's go back to the end of the 2nd round where he's ground and pounding him. Thought he finished it, but it's so loud and he's so full of adrenaline, and so's Herb Dean. Herb Dean pushes him off. He thinks it's over. Dolite even has a disappointed look. Nope, you got a minute to recoup, get back out there. Fluffy didn't miss a beat.
Yeah, I mean, very, very impressive performance by him. Looked super composed. Those are the type of performances you want to see someone have right before they jump into title contention. And the fact that he was able to get the finish at the end, considering that he was dominating that fight, he could have tried to cruise, but he was hunting for the finish. Just a very dominant performance from him. You know, people comparing him to Merab, Cain Velasquez. I've seen a lot of those comments, just his ability to pressure and just the way he was taking him down. He was just kind of like barreling him down. It wasn't even like your traditional like double leg or anything like that. It was just that immense pressure, and we haven't really seen Dolitze. I know he doesn't have like the greatest record in terms of the top contenders at middleweight, but still, he's not an easy guy to dominate like that. And I think Fluffy put out a hell of a statement. And the fact that he said the UFC are flying him to Chicago, I'm not quite sure what their intention is, considering that Caio Borralho is the backup for the fight. Considering that Imavov and Borralho, a lot of people are looking at that as the #1 contender fight. I spoke to Imavov a few days ago, and he was legitimately like offended and disrespected that I asked him the implications of this fight. It was just supposed to be a general question. And it's like, I talked to him about Fluffy. It was before Hernandez fought, but I said, you know, there's that fight. There's Rainier de Ridder who just beat Whitaker, and he was literally like disrespected that I asked that question. But now you see the UFC flying Fluffy Hernandez there. We all know it's about timing and who's ready to go and when the champions want to fight. So yeah, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. A very, very impressive performance. I think a lot of people are resonating with his personality, a lot of fans and stuff like that. So yeah, he's a fun guy. He's been active. He's been finishing fights and definitely in the mix. That being said, I do think that Borralho and Imavov is the #1 contender fight, especially if Imavov wins. But you never know.
Mm-hmm. Dan, how about that sequence? Calf kick, elbow strike, and then did you see the wherewithal? He knew that there's new rules, right, with a grounded opponent, and so he got a knee in, towards the head, and then made the adjustment when Dolite made the adjustment, going back to Fada. That dude's not easy to finish. I think this is the first time he's been finished. And then, of course, he just strangles him. Looked like he put a crowbar underneath his neck, dropped him like a sack of potatoes. Gangsta finish. Your thoughts?
Yeah, big fan of Fluffy Hernandez, man. I've been a big fan of this guy for a minute and saw the problem that he presents. Not many guys can deal with that in this division. And his striking also looked much better on the feet even. He looked real clean with his 1s and 2s. And Roman's not an easy guy to finish, man. Big, hairy guy too, man, Dolidze. But Dolidze definitely had nothing for him, man. And it was rough if you were a Dolidze supporter there. But yeah, Anthony Hernandez continues to impress me. I got nothing but good things to say about him. And I just remember us interviewing him back like fresh off the Contender Series with his potty mouth there. Yeah. So it's funny like seeing everybody discover his potty mouth, something we kind of saw from back in the day, guys, which is kind of funny.
Like 7-8 years ago, I remember that. Yeah, Danny, man, if Imavov's tuning into SBC, he's going to be offended at us if he was offended at Fada's questions. But where would you place Fluffy now in terms of what's next after this weekend, which is DDP versus Khamzat Chimaev? Let's get away from what if it's a draw, what if they run it back. Let's just pretend like someone's next. Who is it?
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be Fluffy. Yes, I know that he's on an 8-fight win streak, and that should get you a title shot, at least just by the sound of it. But I don't think you should get a title shot off a win over Roman Dolidze. And that's the problem with Fluffy. And it's not a specific problem with Fluffy. It's just the matchmakers. I feel like at this point, for his 8th fight or looking to extend his win streak to 8 in a row, he should have gotten a bigger name than Roman Dolidze. I know things didn't pan out. There wasn't people available, but maybe don't make that RDR and Whitaker fight, right? And you put instead Fluffy in there. But yeah, I don't think you should get a title shot off a win over Roman Dolidze. But certainly 8 wins in a row is very meaningful in the division. So I think he should be in a title eliminator bout. Against who? We'll see how things pan out. I wouldn't mind the RDR fight. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And then the winner of Caio Borralho, and there you go. I'll give some shine to Imavov. So maybe he's happy watching SBC. Maybe the winner of that should get a title shot. We'll see how things pan out. I think it also matters the way that you win. So we'll see how Borralho and Imavov win. But no, I don't think Fluffy should be next. As good as he's looked, I don't think he should be next.
What if the winner of Imavov and Borralho pulls a Carlos Ulberg, wins but doesn't impress? Yeah. Do you think he gets?
I think he's passed over. Maybe. I think it'll be between him or RDR, but probably leaning towards RDR. Usually, if you beat Whitaker, you're getting a title shot. So we'll see how things pan out. But that fight would have to be very boring in order for the winner not to get a title shot in Borralho and Imavov. But
so why we'll do you think how things shake out. Flown to Chicago then? Why do you think he's getting flown to Chicago then?
Well, precisely because, I'm not saying he can't get a title shot or he won't get a title shot. I think he has a shot, but I think it's very minimal. You know how at the start of each season in soccer, say like the Premier League, they have the percentages out of who's likely going to win the Premier League title, Liverpool, Manchester, Chelsea, whatever. He's in that conversation, I do feel like, but he's at the bottom of it. So a lot of things would have to play out. A very decisive win at UFC 319, Imavov and Borralho to be very boring, maybe RDR to get injured, or a lot of things have to play out for Fluffy to be next. But again, we'll see how it all shakes out in the coming weeks.
Okay. I thought Fluffy might have shot to the top when he said that they told him you're going to Chicago.
Well,
those are my thoughts.
And I think you're right. But in terms of being in the conversation, but look at what happened with Ilia Topuria. Like Gagey was there, Patty was there, Sarukian was there, and they were all featured on the cameras. I think that's why they're bringing him up there. He's got a chance. They don't know how Borralho and Imavov are going to look. So, if they gotta, have his reaction there to the fight because he just happens to be next because of the way things play out, well, then you have him there to get his reaction and kind of help build that pay-per-view or that numbered event should it happen, right? But again, all these things have to. It's a big wait and see.
Fad, I apologize. I love your product. I love, I know you even have the other Instagram channel as well. I missed that interview. Can you give me the cliff notes? What happened in that interview? How offended was he? Was he smiling at the end, or was he really, really perturbed?
I mean, it was a little awkward. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I had to clear the air after, but I think he maybe thought that I thought he didn't. I was just asking him what his conversations were like. Maybe it's a language barrier thing. Granted, I do speak French, but I like to hear them. Well, his manager translated for them, but I do like to hear it from them rather than me do my own translation. But yeah, he just seemed like, who else was kind of his reaction? Like, are we seriously having this conversation? Granted, this was before Fluffy fought Dolidze, but I was just telling them that there's RDR in the running. There's, Fluffy, the winner of Fluffy and Dolidze, and then his fight. And he was just like, he believes that he, if it wasn't for Khamzat being an undefeated phenom and a big star, that it could have been him. He felt like he's done enough, and he's been active and beat a lot of the top contenders. So I understand his frustration because there are a lot of people, whether fighters or pundits, that are under the impression that the UFC don't want Imavov to get a title shot. That's just something that they might think, maybe because he's on the quieter side, maybe a language barrier thing. But he's been talking. He's put out videos. He put out a video kind of going out after Borralho, and he was very confident and had some good lines. I can understand them in French. So yeah, he's been doing a better job of kind of selling the fight and stuff like that. Maybe it's not entirely his character, but yeah, I don't know where people are getting this impression from that the UFC don't want him there. I mean, he knocked out Israel Adesanya in great fashion. They're acting like he eked out a boring decision over Adesanya. So that theory doesn't really make too much sense to me, but I understand his frustration. He said it wasn't really towards me, which I don't know, but more at the idea that why are we talking about other guys if he beats Borralho? And he said he didn't want, remember, he dismissed Borralho in the beginning because he felt like, why should I fight backwards? But then he figured out later, like, why am I going to sit out all that? Like, I want to stay active, which is why he fought Borralho. So yeah, I get where he's coming from.
Did you tell him, hey, we got a problem? We can do a 3-point shooting contest. We'll settle it right here, man. Dan, you're a wealth of knowledge, man. You've forgotten more than most of us know. What's next for Delite? Who would you partner him up with? He's kind of fought a lot of middleweights. He had a nice 3-fight win streak going in. But where would you place this guy who has dabbled with light heavyweight? But, whether you want to stick him as a middleweight or light heavyweight, what would you do with him next?
Well, I'll have the roster in front of me, but I'll tell you exactly where I don't want him, George. And that's in another main event Apex fight. Can we stop the middleweight? We've had how many lightweight fights of the year that, like, could we get 2 more rounds of that, please? Sometimes in the co-main event, like just the week prior, right, with Duncan and Rebecca, like, can we get these lightweights headlining some of these Apex cards? Can we stop? Like, just because you'll see it once a middleweight headlines, it's like once a guy fights for the title, he always has that like rub, even if he doesn't win the title. Fair enough. You got all the way up to a title. But the prerequisite at middleweight is just being a middleweight, and you get Apex 5-round fights, and it makes no sense. And Delite is a wild man. He can be entertaining, but not in 5 rounds, win or lose. Even if he wins, it's not going to look good in 5 rounds. Don't book the man in 5-round fights. Please give the lighter weight classes some shine, matchmakers. Please, please.
There you go. I wonder if the numbers are through the roof. Paramount Plus in Georgia or something, because obviously with Topuria and Dvalishvili, maybe they just figured we got to cash in over there. But all right, let's move on to the co-main event. Steve Erceg defeated Ode Osborne. Danny, wasn't easy for him, man. He got knocked down. His legs were shaky, but he did come back and win the next couple of rounds and started to really, really put the hammer on Ode Osborne. But Astro Boy, no longer on the 3-fight win streak. What's next for him, Danny?
3-fight losing streak.
Losing streak, sorry.
Yeah. Oof, man. Look, I still think that, he bounced back from the 3-fight losing streak, but like, I don't think he's still fully out of the woods. I mean, if you really look at it, if he were to suffer a defeat in his next bout, he'd be 1-4 in his last 5 bouts, which is obviously not good. Look, I think he got into the UFC and got a very rough start. They just catapulted him to the top. And look, you got to take the opportunity. I remember talking to Alexa Grasso when she got her first title shot, and it wasn't under the best conditions, but she always said, look, if I'm ever going to get a title shot, I'm going to say yes, no matter what. I don't care what's going on in my life. If the UFC gives you a title shot, you have to take it. So I very much agree with that, and I understand why Steve Erceg took that fight. But then fighting Kai Kara-France, fighting Brandon Moreno, I don't think he's ready just yet, and he hasn't really had the opportunity to evolve in the UFC as most fighters have. He's just been catapulted to the top. So take it easy. Don't gun for a top contender. Take on another guy, even in the top 15 or even outside the rankings. Who knows? Ode was outside of the rankings, right? And that was a fine fight. I don't think he needs to go back to the top dogs, or else he focus on evolving, focus on getting better, and get 2-3 wins, get really away from that career rut that he had in the last couple of years. And yeah.
Danny, I'm staying with you. Give me another highlight from this event in Vegas this past weekend.
Man, I got to shout out Jocelyn Edwards. I interviewed her, and she told me, she's like, I'm going to be the first person to knock out Priscilla Cachoeira. And not that I didn't believe her, but I'm like, man, Zombie Girl's tough. No one has been able to do that. But I kind of refuted by saying that. And then she was very gracious, obviously in good faith. And she's like, well, Chelsea Chandler had never been finished, and I was the first to finish her and put her out in my last fight. So I'm like, good point. And she did exactly that. I mean, it was a brutal knockout. I think this is a girl that's on the come up. I do think that there's a lot of potential here. So I don't know. Watch out for Jocelyn Edwards. She's getting better. She's got fast hands, explosive. She can wrestle. She can box. Who knows what her ceiling is, but I think she can go very far and maybe be a top 5 fighter soon.
That's a good one. Farah Hanoum, give me another highlight from the UFC fight card this past weekend.
Elijah Smith, his Sam knockout. He got a nice shout out from Rampage Jackson. Very scary to see. It's like you get excited about the finish, and then you're like, is Kazama okay? And was it a broken collarbone? Is that that was put out? And then there was like a picture of him of Five Guys or something like that. But yeah, it's like you want to get excited for the finish, but at the same time, you want to make sure his opponent's okay. But yeah, I mean, he got everybody talking about it. He got Rampage Jackson, shouting him out in a post. You can't get anything better than that. And I'll shout out Christian Leroy Duncan as well. That was a great finish. And he plays basketball, so I got to shout him out.
Yeah, nice elbow, man. I thought the other two were gonna go through the canvas like the Undertaker and Mick Foley. I mean, that was quite a slam, and those guys are just little guys too. Dan, Tom, how about you, man? Who do you want to put a little spotlight on from this card here in Vegas?
I kind of want to spotlight something Danny said, because it was like a theme that was really clear. It's clear to anybody watching, but on this card particularly, from all the way down to flyweight, from title challengers like Steve Erceg to bigger guys like Julius Walker, who I like, by the way, at heavyweight, who's a newer guy, right? It doesn't matter. What Danny said is we're not seeing these fighters get time to mature these days, because it's content, schedule. And that's something that was really apparent with this weekend, that fighters really, I know it's hard. You like with the title shot thing that Grasso, that Fada brought up with Grasso, like, yeah, big opportunities you can't say no to, but as best you can, if you can manage your careers and not rush, which was something that, Danny was saying as well, that's something to really sentiment on. And I'll just shout out Kazama in a loss, for despite taking that massive loss, he still made the right choice and went to 5 guys. I know it's gonna upset a lot of in and out people.
I like this grappling.
Right choice.
I like this grappling, but those leg locks can put you in trouble. That's a nice shout out. I'm glad he's doing better. I'm gonna shout out 2 people. Earl Smedich. Look, this guy shows up a lot on cards, but that was one crazy left, man. That was a nice knockout for him. Good for him. I want to shout out Dan Tom. On Saturday, I'm reading my emails, right? And I get the fluid thoughts from Dan Tom. I always go to the underdog, man. Spot on Andre Feely. Southpaws with length. Loved it. Right to the tee. He even said, watch out for a split decision. And Feely was not pleased with the split decision. And I get it, because I thought it was clear that he won. But great job, Dan, as our fight analyst. Subscribe to Dan Tom's Fluid Thoughts before you make your bets. We got to move on here. Next up is PFL World Tournament 9. It's this weekend, right? The 15th on Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern. And you can watch them on ESPN, so no excuses. Airport lounges, wherever. Who doesn't have that, right? Or ESPN Plus. 2 more title fights. Danny, what are your thoughts on Gadzi Rabadanov and Alfie Davis?
Out of all the finals that are out there, I would say that this is one that I'm sort of the least excited for, to be honest. But still, big spotlight for both guys. I'm curious to see what they're able to do. I'm surprised how far Alfie Davis has gone through this tournament. I underestimated him, and look, he's now a finalist and 1 fight away from being a world champion and $500,000. So, let's see how this shakes out. But I think my prediction for this one is Gadzi. I think he's going to take this one.
Yeah. Listen, I liked hearing about PFL, in the origins, PFL origins. Habib sharing the story where he congratulated Ramadanov for beating Kevin Lee, but then telling him, hey, look, this next one's not going to be easy. Alfie Davis is a kickboxer. He presents a lot of different spinning attacks, right? He's got that axe kick right down the middle, and he looks confident and not intimidated in the least bit. But he should be a little bit, because Rabadanov's no joke, comes from the wrestling background, except that lately he's really been getting down, man, with his hands. I mean, he really rearranged Kevin Lee's jaw. He had to drink from a straw for a couple of weeks. Lee was sharing this on social media, so he's no joke. But I would recommend Rabadanov take it to the ground. You don't want to stand with a guy like Alfie Davis. I think that's definitely where your strength is at. My prediction is Rabadanov goes back-to-back, wins another title for PFL and $500K. But I think Alfie Davis, if he can keep it standing, obviously this thing will get competitive as it goes on. Rabadanov hasn't been tested in over 25 minutes in a long time. He's been winning his fights rather quickly. I think he's only put in 3 minutes of work in 2025. In the co-main event, Jenna Bishop and Liz Carmouche. Farah, who do you like in this one? Carmouche is, she's an elder stateswoman in this sport, an OG, but every time I think she's going to slow down, she doesn't.
Yeah, 41 years old, and I want to see her win this fight, because I want to see her fight Dakota Ditriva. A lot of us were maybe surprised, disappointed. I don't know what the right word is when she re-signed with PFL, because obviously highly touted and people wanted to see her in the UFC. But if now that she's re-signed with PFL, we want to see her against kind of bigger names. Like those are the names we want her to have on her resume, be tested against those girls. So yeah, I think the winner of this fight is probably going to fight Dakota next. And yeah, I mean, I find it hard to bet against Liz. She's so experienced. She's fought so many good fighters, and she still got it. She still looks good. So I'm going to go with her and hope she wins, because I do want to see that fight with Dakota.
Yeah, and Dakota's gone through everyone, including Jenna Bishop. But this one is Bishop against Carmouche. Bishop, very, very tough on the ground. But that's somewhere where Liz also can do very, very well. She's just very, very well-rounded. I think the experience will come into play. I like Liz Carmouche in this one. Going the distance more than likely, because I don't think it will be easy, but I really want to see these ladies tangle on the ground, because I think that's where the fight can really, really get be more exciting of the two. That's the co-main event, and the main event is Alfie Davis versus Gazi Rabadonov. Each winner walks away with $500,000 and a belt. And yes, there's some big, big opportunities for these ladies at flyweight. Dakota Ditcheva being, I guess, the grand jewel. I think she's probably the biggest name over at PFL. Dan, Gazi Rabadonov, can you just speak on the wrestling from the Dagestanis, the Russians, right? I mean, these guys, what makes them so unstoppable? Is it just that they're so committed to the steps that they take, from takedown to tying up legs and wrist control? What's almost the best first line of defense? Obviously staying on your feet, but once you get taken down, what is the best line of defense against these cats?
Honestly, I haven't watched too much of Radzabanov, but and I don't want to placate into the almost weird, like people almost like fetishize the Dagestani, like border the mountains of Darfur and the fires of Dagestan, and like MMA bettors just get rock hard. It's kind of weird. So I don't want to feed too much into that, but there obviously is something special there. And the history, they have a lot of Sambo, which comes from judo. And then you mix it in with wrestling. So with that judo and sambo mix, you get some different like step throughs from the body lock. You also get the savviness with submissions and transitional games. So it's very influenced off of that. Khabib Nurmagomedov's father, Abdulmanap, obviously was a big proponent in that area, and he trained under USSR level judokas, and he was one himself. So a lot actually comes from judo that not many people talk about. But without going into a whole histrionics, I just want to like keep to the facts and not be like the Dagestanis are drinking from this mythical pond and it's giving them weird beards and power. You know, like how everybody seems to act. It's actually like very traceable stuff, folks. But I just want to say before we get off the PFL, I wanted to shout out Mads Burnell versus Robert Watley Jr. on that main card. That's going to be a low-key banger. Robert Watley's a savvy southpaw who's beaten like guys like Thiago Moises in the UFC and given a lot of tough fighters to others. And then, of course, Mads Burnell is my guy. I love Mads. Love his boxing style. Criminally underrated. Really stoked for that fight.
I'm glad you brought him up. Yeah, Mads is on that card. Tune in, folks, on Friday, August 19th for PFL World Tournament 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific, ESPN and ESPN Plus. Let's move on to Saturday night, UFC 319. Level of interest, Danny, 1 through 10. Just the card on paper. They haven't happened yet. Are you up there, dude? Because this main event carries a lot of weight. It's what we all want, right? When the champion fights the number one.
I'll say this: the main card itself is not like it's a good card. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like UFC 205 or UFC 300 or anything like that. But the entirety of the preliminary card, dude, every single fighter on here has a Wikipedia page. That means something. So, yeah, this is a very good card, and that main event is just spectacular. So I'm gonna say a 9.3. I am very, very hyped, very excited for UFC 319.
Vada, how about you? On paper, what do you give it?
For me, a 10. And Joseph Oza, don't put that idea into the universe that Khamzat doesn't make it to the cage, because I've been waiting for this moment for so long. I've been highly touting Khamzat for the longest time, since he was like 2-0 as a pro, and I always felt like he was destined to become champion. So to finally hopefully, inshallah, see him compete on Saturday against Dricus Du Plessis. I'm super excited. I think regardless of me being excited to see Khamzat finally fight for a title, the matchup itself with Dricus is incredible. So the card is good. There's some interesting, fun fights like bangers like Jeff Neal and Carlos Prates, but for me, just that main event alone is incredible. Just super, super excited to see Khamzat finally fight for a UFC title. I'm glad it's at middleweight because he's always talked about the double champ thing. Even when I interviewed him at Brave Combat Federation, he was talking about wanting to hold the welterweight and middleweight straps. But obviously, he's healthier and better at middleweight. So I'm glad that the title shot is coming at 185 pounds. And yeah, absolutely can't wait for Khamzat to finally fight for a title.
All right, Dan, your level of your 1 through 10, right, for the fight card on paper, and then I want you to talk about. Remember, this isn't middleweights rematch at the Apex. This is down your alley. I know you can't wait to do a deep dive this week in your analysis.
Yeah, this is a good middleweight fight for sure. I would say this card's probably a 7.8 to an 8.0 with the potential of it finishing as a 10. And I say that because it's got low-key underrated bangers, even from like the opener at flyweight or bantamweight with Joseph Morales and this other guy who's coming in who's really talented and really fun. That being said, and I know it's not their fault, they tried to get a co-main event, but the co-main event died in the ESPN era as far as fight nights go, and it's slowly been dying since the pandemic. As far as like co-main events on pay-per-views go, we've been getting much weaker bills. I mean, they've had to create BMFs and interns just to get gold on their posters at the top. Forget the co-main slot, folks. And having, an impromptu guy who's not proven, an impromptu fight with a guy who's not proven, as excited as we are in Aaron Pico, I'm not trying to take away from that. Again, these impromptu fights really take it away to where even if Aaron Pico and Lerone Murphy was on your bingo card for something to get excited for, even if you're that guy, how can you honestly, you should be most upset if you're that guy because you're getting the fight you want, but it's not on ideal circumstances, which is almost a waste of the fight, a waste of a fighter's time, a potential loss for a fighter you care about being talked into a fight to give his ranking a la Lerone Murphy. I don't know, man. I can't. I don't know. I feel like they could still do much better. And the top is great, and it has a potential to be a 10, 7.8 to 8.0 for me.
Do you like DDP's mindset from the beginning, from the time that he started asking for Khamzat to where we are now?
Yeah, man, I've really come around on DDP, and I'll probably talk more about it in my breakdown. But even the stuff that people like myself have criticized him for, and we've kind of like forgave it as part of his game, he's really just been getting better in all areas, man. So I really don't have anything bad to say about DDP. I've really come around on him as far as his fighting goes.
Vada, what about his cardio issues? That's going to come up all week. He's going to get asked about it. He already got asked about it at the Jackson house when he had his own private, meeting with the media last week. But it's going to continue to come up, rightfully so, because the bigger names that he has fought, he slowed down. Those were the kinks in the armor that we kind of heard about. But he swears he's addressed them. He's further removed from those bouts of COVID that took him to a retirement. I think he's wiser and more settled down now, being a father. But what are your thoughts? Do you think this thing will creep up at some point, or do you think he's got it on lockdown for the biggest fight of his life?
I think both guys are going to get tired in the fight just because of the way they both fight. I mean, Dricus is kind of all over the place when he fights, and he just, they get these second wins during the fight. I mean, they don't fight in a composed, outpoint you type of manner. Neither guy does. So that's why it's natural to see the both of them get tired, because DDP is a big, strong guy who has an ability to scramble. He's not afraid to go wherever the fight goes, whether it's trying to throw leather, pushing forward, or trying to grapple you. I mean, his coach said, we'll fight Khamzat where his strength lies, which is the grappling. I don't know if he's going to initiate the takedown, maybe an ego thing. If he feels like Khamzat's slowing down during the fight, that he's going to want to, kind of like a Jones DC type of thing, where Jones just wanted to prove a point by taking DC down. But yeah, I expect both guys to get tired because they're going to push a heavy pace. That's the way the both of them fight. I know DDP doesn't necessarily look the prettiest, but he's a fighter. I've always said this about DDP. What makes him so good, it's not necessarily his technique or his striking or his grappling or whatnot. He's a fighter, and he keeps going the whole way through, even though there are certain parts of the fight when you watch him where he looks like he could potentially be slowing down or whatnot. But it's just the way he fights. And same thing for Khamzat. I think the criticism, because we expect such perfection from him and because he's ran through so many opponents, that when he does get pushed into later rounds, whether Gilbert Burns or Kamaru Usman, we don't look at it as in a positive manner where he's outlasting guys. We're looking at it because we're so used to him running through guys that it's almost a negative. But yeah, I expect both guys to get tired if this goes the distance or into the championship rounds. I expect both guys to be tired and be pushing a heavy pace because that's how they fight. And with Khamzat, I know a lot of people are advising him to stand and strike a little bit, not necessarily go for the wrestling right away, but he only knows one way. This is how he fights. He's confident he can get any guy on the ground, and I do believe he can get DDP to the ground. But yeah, I'm expecting both guys to push a heavy pace and both guys to get tired, but I'm not expecting somebody to I don't expect Khamzat to completely fade if it goes the full 25 minutes.
Shout out to Pi Abundus in the chat. He's flying to Chicago later on today. He's going to UFC 319. Good for you, man. Enjoy your summer vacation. Enjoy Chi-Town. Great town, great card. Danny, what does the UFC really want behind the scenes? You know, either guy wins. They got a roadmap, right, for how they can promote that champ and what they do with that division. But secretly, they always kind of lean one way or the other. What's the best scenario for the UFC?
Man, I don't know. I really don't know. I've thought about this a lot. I think immediately you probably think Khamzat Chimaev just because he's undefeated. He's important to that area of the Middle East, and obviously they're having more cards over there. And he's an international star. Like, not only is he important for that area, but here in the US, he's beloved as well. And he seems to have beef with everyone as well. So, like, you can make tons of grudge matches and bad blood fights in the lead. Yeah, and the lead up to so many pay-per-views. And he's like a sort of like this bad boy persona and stuff. So that's great. I think he's definitely more marketable and more promotable than DDP. And that's not to say DDP is not promotable, but DDP is very reliable, man. This is a guy that always shows up, that fights often, that doesn't really get injured. And I can't say the same thing for Khamzat Chimaev. And we know how the UFC likes to have, title fights in every pay-per-view. And, sometimes they're even forced to make up belts just to be able to have that. So having a very reliable champion, I think, is worth a lot. So I don't know. Do you want the new shiny toy that may break sometimes that, you can't really count on all the time? Or do you want a guy that's also good promotable as well, but perhaps, not as promotable as Khamzat, but he always show up. He'll always be there. So this is a tough one. I don't know.
I like this question. Let's ask the rest of the panel. What do you think, Fada? Both undefeated in the UFC. Chimaev overall. DDP only has 2 losses, but he hasn't lost since 2019. Like I say, 9-0 in the UFC. He's been former champion Sean Strickland twice, Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker. So he's very, very proven. He's passed the cardio issues, got his nose issues addressed, whatever that was. It affected his breathing. And look, out of 23 wins, he's finished 20 of them. And he seems very respectful towards the past, saying, hey, Anderson's the GOAT, but I want to get there. And I want to fight the best fighters along the way. Like, he's won me over just the same way he's won over Dan Tom.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet so Dan can get an opportunity to talk. Right now, Khamzat's the bigger star, probably has more aura, more, like, garners more numbers. But for DDP, you beat Khamzat, you take a lot of that. That's what I think it is.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Dan? Who do you think the UFC would benefit most from having their hand raised on Saturday in the main event? Your mic, Dan. Dan, your mic.
No need to make room for me. I get enough room to talk, folks. My breakdowns, but yeah, I think Khamzat Chimaev would be their choice if we played that game.
Okay. Danny, Aaron Pico versus Lerone Murphy. This sounds crazy, but is this in any way a title eliminator? Murphy undefeated. Pico coming over, but he was slotted against Movsar Evloev, who's right at the cusp of a title shot. So obviously, if he beat him, he might have snuck in there. Can he do that with Murphy? What are your thoughts?
I think it could be. I really do think the UFC likes Pico a lot, and there's a reason why he's in the co-main event. They're giving him a top contender right off the bat. I mean, immediately they were giving him the number 1 guy, Evloev. So I think if Pico goes out there and gets a knockout, I think he surpasses Evloev. And this is not what I want to see, but I'm just saying how the UFC operates. I think it could be.
Okay. Fada, Carlos Prates and Jeff Neal. Neal saying on social media, this thing's going to not go past the first round. Do not go off and top off your beer or anything like that. This one's going to be nonstop action. What are your thoughts on this fight between these welterweights?
Yeah, I love this fight, and I love that he's saying that. Both guys are proven finishers with high knockout rates, and an important one for Carlos Prates trying to rebound from the Ian Machado Gary loss to try to get right back on track. And Jeff Neal's got a lot of great wins on his resume. He's constantly counted out. I'm not sure what the current odds are, but Jeff Neal is a veteran. He's fought some really good level competition, and I do believe them when they say that this fight is not going to go past round one. I think it's a banger of a matchup and a perfect matchup to be on the main card.
Mm-hmm. Dan, your thoughts on this welterweight matchup?
I think it's great. One of two southpaw versus southpaw fights, and southpaw versus southpaw fights are extra crazy to predict. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see some craziness in this fight, man.
I know you do a lot of deep dive when you do your fight analyst, and I remember on MMA Junkie Radio, you'd always find some good nuggets to ask the guests. Prates, do you think Prates really has a smoking problem, or does he do it for the camera? I remember there was a boxer, and his name escapes me, who
Mayorga?
used to,
Mayorga,
yes.
yeah.
But when he was asked about it, he says a lot of it's for the camera. I really don't smoke that much. But what are your thoughts on that? And, it's always going to come down on him, obviously, especially now that he's taken a loss.
I think a bit of column A and column B. I think he does smoke. That's a real popular thing with the Thai cultures up there. And you see a lot of the Thais smoking right before their fights. Like that actually isn't too uncommon. But would I be surprised if he plays it up for camera? Like, of course not. I mean, that's the name of the game. And their team is doing good with that, with the promotion. They got their own like Fighting Nerds t-shirts. So shouts to them, man.
Fada, you spoke to MVP. He's in a matchup here, not as a welterweight, but as a middleweight against an aging Jared Cannonier, who, by the way, still has not slowed down too much. What are your thoughts on this fight? Did MVP come off as someone who's just more settled and happy with his, I believe, temporary decision, right?
Yeah, well, he just feels like there's a lot more politics at welterweight because when you look at the top contenders, the Kamaros, the Colbys, they kind of fought everybody and they understand the sensitive and dangerous point they are at their career, what a win or a loss could do. Obviously, Kamaru eventually ended up fighting Joaquin Buckley and now he's back in the title mix, but it's a risk, right? He loses to Joaquin, and especially if he loses by knockout, it's like everyone's going to say that Kamaru's done, right? So I understand his him being a middleweight is probably better for him in terms of his career progression. Jared Cannonier was not too happy with the matchmaking. I totally get why. He just feels like, MVP is not ranked, and he was taken aback by the matchmaking. For MVP, obviously an opportunity to jump right in there, and it's a good stylistic matchup for him. I think his speed is going to play a really big factor against Jared. I know Jared's coming off of the come from behind knockout over Gregory Rodriguez, but he did get touched up. I think he's getting hit a lot more as he's getting older, and he said he looked at the Robert Whittaker fight and took a lot out of that. So yeah, I do favor MVP here, and I do believe his speed is going to play a big factor. But Jared Cannonier is still very good and still a veteran with a lot of experience.
For sure. All right. So the rest of the card, give me another highlight from the rest of the card that you're personally looking forward to. Let's go back to the 305, Danny Segura.
I'm going to shout out a bout at women's strawweight, Jessica Andrade versus Lupi Godinez. This is a really fun fight. Two of the most powerful strawweights right now in the division, physically speaking. I'm curious to see how this one looks. And I think this is a great opportunity for Lupi. I think Andrade is, still a good fighter, but probably her better days are behind her. Lupi, I do think there's a lot of upside there, and she's getting a big name. Easily the biggest fight of her career, I think, maybe. I don't know. It depends. Yeah, I mean, former champion. So, let's see what she's able to do here.
Speaking of her better days, she had one hell of a slam too, Jessica Andrade. I know she slowed down a lot lately, but that was an epic win, man, that she had when she won the title. Dan Tom, another highlight from UFC 319. What are you looking forward to?
I'm going to touch on that fight I touched on earlier, man. The flyweight curtain jerker between Alibi Idiris, I'm not sure if I pronounced the Kazakh gentleman's name correctly, taking on Joseph Morales, who's coming back to the UFC. And this one's going to be all action, so make sure you tune in early, folks. Flyweight's kicking off the main card too, which is nice to see. Good job, UFC matchmakers, by not shoving more middleweights down in that slot. But yeah, flyweight openers, baby. Don't miss it.
All right. And Fada Hanoun, you know the deal. Give me something you want to highlight from some of the other fights that we haven't touched on at the top.
Yeah, I like Brian Battle and Rozaboyev. I think that's an interesting matchup. I've been very surprised
They're
with
way down
Brian.
there too.
Yeah, I've been surprised with Brian Battle's success in the octagon, the run that he's been on, and tough never die.
And Battle he's creeping up on the rankings. He's on a run. I wonder why they got so buried. Look, it's a deep card, but I think this one they were treated a little unjustly. I mean, they're gonna fight like at 11 a.m. or something. I don't know. King Green is always entertaining. I know he's slowed down a lot, but I think he's got a good dance partner in Carlos Diego Ferreira. And the smack talk and the head movement, he always makes it fun. He takes his L's pretty good. You know, he'll applaud the winner, and then of course if he wins, he thumps his chest. He's a SoCal guy, as am I, and they're lightweights. They're always exciting. Folks, Goes and I will be hosting a watch along on Saturday starting at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We'll do 4 prelim fights together. And of course, when we get to the main card, it is a pay-per-view. And for the rest of 2025, you got to pony up $80. But if you don't want to do that, just stick with us on the watch along. And Goes and I will be your eyes and ears. Earlier that day, Farah Hanoun will be doing her preview show for UFC 319, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Farah, do you have a co-host yet?
Not yet.
All right. Well, there's plenty of talented members on the staff who I'm sure would love to dance with you Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Now, don't forget, PFL World Tournament, Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern on ESPN, and then UFC 319 on Saturday. So this weekend, lots of face punching. And we're going to be here to discuss it all next week on Spinning Back Clique. Quick note, don't forget, early start time for the next 3 months, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to accommodate the weigh-ins that are starting right now.